Unlike other RPGs where your party is limited to the characters that are in it at any given time, Pokémon has always had a mechanic for taking in and out those party members at will, thanks to the PC that they are stored in. This is vital for the games working as intended. If you really are to catch them all, and there are more than 6 of them, you need somewhere to put the other 145 Pokémon when you're not using them. The PC began as a very clunky, old-fashioned, annoying-to-use machine in the corner of every Pokémon Center. It has a box system in which there are 12 boxes able to hold up to 20 Pokémon each. I have to imagine this limitation in design is a data storage thing that makes it easier and more viable for the game to access Pokémon data in memory, and that the retention of such a box system is now more because it's easier to organize Pokémon that way, rather than any necessity from hardware. Boxes in the early game were a kind of fixed terminal, as when you caught or deposited Pokémon, they went to a specific box, not just wherever there was room. When that box gets full, after storing the maximum of 20 Pokémon, you have to manually change boxes at the Pokémon Center. No doing it in the field, that would be too convenient. You also couldn't catch any more Pokémon if the box was full. There was also no moving Pokémon between boxes. You needed to withdraw a Pokémon, swap the box, and then deposit it in another in 3 separate steps. There's no pictures of said Pokémon either. You just get a big list of 20 of what's there, and that's that. I don't want to be too harsh, since I genuinely believe most of these issues are the results of very real hardware limitations, and in context, the PC works well enough. You can complete the Pokédex, you can deposit and withdraw Pokémon freely, and changing boxes really doesn't take that long. Does it work? Yes. Is it a good user experience? Absolutely not. The PC system in Generation 2 really isn't that much better, but it did make 3 vital changes that are very good. You now get an image of each Pokémon when you're browsing the boxes. This is important for looking at the brand new shiny Pokémon if you have 2 of the same and 1 is shiny. I'm not really sure why they put an orange box over the top of them, masking their actual colours, but whatever, I'll take it. The other more important change in my view is that moving Pokémon between boxes is now possible, meaning that you no longer need to tediously swap boxes when you want to move a Pokémon between them. You still need to save each time you move a Pokémon, but that's okay because it's relatively quick. The last change is small, but quite nice. Bill will now call you and let you know that your box is full and that you need to manually change it. It's not that big a deal, but at least it's some reminder before you get into the awkward scenario of having a real shiny in front of you in a wild battle, and you go to throw a ball, and you can't, because your box is full. But beyond these things, it's about as good as the Generation 1 PC, which is to say, not really great. Then we come to Generation 3, the dream modernization of the Pokémon storage system. Believe it or not, Generation 3 included the last major changes to how the PC works. For the most part, it's been unchanged since then, with some additions like filters, battle boxes, and so on, but the basic infrastructure and features have remained the same. And I think it's because they got it so right in Generation 3. Let me walk you through why. Firstly, the scenario I described earlier, with a shiny on screen that you cannot catch, gone. The PC just puts newly caught Pokémon in whichever box has capacity. Technically, it could still happen if you manage to exceed the total storage available for the entire PC. But in Generation 3, that's 420 Pokémon, meaning you could have an entire living dex in your PC and still have room left over. Most people will never even have to contemplate filling up half the PC thanks to the massive increase in max capacity in Generation 3. By comparison, the maximum in Generation 2 was 280. The next good thing, and I really think this is undervalued when comparing to Generation 2, is the fluid movement of Pokémon between boxes. Gone are the days of saving every time you wanted to move a Pokémon. You can also jump between boxes so that you don't have to scroll through all of them to get from, say, box 2 to box 12. Gone are the awkward text-only menus with a weirdly orange-tinted sprite in front of you. You can now move Pokémon between as many boxes as you like without ever having to save, and the cursor system in place there makes much more sense. I would be failing if I also did not mention that you can now move entire boxes at a time by hitting select when using the cursor. This might not be that useful if you only have a couple of full boxes, but if you have any more than that, it speeds things up massively. Again, this really isn't a criticism of Generations 1 and 2 given their limitations, but the changes in Generation 3 to actually have a visual representation of the Pokémon in the boxes instead of a list of names is a much better way to arrange the information. It makes it so much easier to organize the Pokémon in ways that make sense. If you wanted to, you could now easily do it by type, by region, by whatever variable you can think of, and have a visually satisfying representation of the Pokémon you have caught. This is something that you might not notice that much and probably take for granted when playing the games, but I think it is such a massive difference to how enjoyable it is to actually collect and arrange your Pokémon. This next thing is interesting because it does not exist in Ruby and Sapphire, but does from Fire Red and Leaf Green onwards. It's the Move Items feature. Not to be confused with the bizarre Move Pokémon Without Mail feature in Gen 2, this feature allows you to view the items Pokémon are holding while they are in the PC boxes, and move them to other Pokémon or to your own bag. This is massively convenient for managing your hold items, especially when you compare it to Generation 2. Did you forget who is holding your EXP share? Good luck, have fun manually searching through up to 14 boxes looking for it. There might be a little icon next to each Pokémon indicating that they are holding something, but you can only see that after actually scrolling through the boxes to get to it. In Generation 3, Pokémon are faded out if they are not holding an item, and appear normally if they are, making scrolling through the boxes with a kind of bird's eye view really clean and easy. Further, if you move the cursor over a specific Pokémon, the sprite for that item will appear beside them, meaning you can check for specific items without having to open the stats page for each one. It also displays small text with their held item below their sprite. It's a small thing, but over time it makes a really big difference. Also, cloning Pokémon for items in Emerald would be a much slower and more annoying process if you weren't able to have this view of items in the PC. On a note of organization, the marking feature is also great, particularly for if you have a lot of the same Pokémon with different traits. I must confess, I don't typically make much use of this feature, but for distinguishing between different sets of the same Pokémon, perhaps if you were breeding for different IVs or abilities, this seems like it could be really useful. The other more minor thing I wanted to talk about was the visual customization options they introduced. You can now name your boxes whatever you please, and there are 17 visual themes that are applicable to the boxes, mostly inspired by the physical locations where different Pokémon may be present. There is also my favourite, the one that it itself is PC themed, called Machine. This isn't a major change, and honestly, half the time I'm playing I might not change these from their defaults, but the options for variation and customization are really cool. I'm also glad that in subsequent generations they have included different themes, rather than just including the original 17 in Generation 3. Funnily enough, the more things change, the more they stay the same. In Generations 1 and 2, the PC was the method for performing some cloning glitches. And as much as they overhauled the PC system in Generation 3, the PC is still the site of incredibly exploitative and actually very easy cloning glitches, specifically in Emerald. It's just kind of funny to me that they did so much to improve the PC, to make it more accessible, not as much of a pain to use, way bigger, and then they end up with a cloning glitch again in Emerald anyway. One of the main reasons I'm so enthusiastic about these changes is that they make the point of Pokémon a bit more fun. That is, collecting a wide range of different Pokémon and being able to access them easily. It's all fine to be able to have different Pokémon and to want to keep them organized, but with a system that requires you to save every time you want to access a segment of 20 of them, that can be a real pain. But with the expansion of the number of boxes, the visual representation of the Pokémon in them, the markings, the visual themes, and the item view, you have a near modular control of how you want to manage your collection of Pokémon. Admittedly, there's not a great number of different themes or markings, but it is a night and day difference to the experience of completing the Pokédex, and just scrolling through looking at what you have can be fun in and of itself. And honestly, the PC really hasn't changed all that much since Generation 3, which just goes to show how much they got right in this instance. Could it be better now? Of course. But for the third generation of a video game series in the year 2002, they got a heck of a lot right. That's all I had, folks. Did you notice how different the PC was in Generation 3 when you were younger? Did you rigorously organize your boxes based on types or regions? Let me know in the comments below. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe, it helps the channel out a bunch. Give me a follow on Twitch if you want to chat between videos and catch a speedrun. Thanks for watching.